Zach will be speaking tonight about the dark side of open source intelligence. So take it away, Zach.
All right. Well, thank you for joining. I am going to talk about open source intelligence, just a little bit about me. I was kidding.
I love it. Okay, I'll mute myself now.
Okay, that's probably for the best, yeah. A little bit about me. My name is Zach Turpin. I've been working for TechGuard Security for about 2 years now. I've been in information security for almost a decade. Most of the time that I've spent in information security has been on the blue team side, so enterprise defense stuff. TechGuard's given me the opportunity to work on more of a red team environment, so more on the attack side. So hopefully kind of get a better perspective of two sides really of the same coin, kind of get a better perspective of the discipline as a whole. So enough about me though. I'm going to talk about open source intelligence. We'll kind of get into what open source intelligence is, talk about some use cases, some specific tools and techniques, and then we're going to do lots of demos because as a frequent viewer of webinars and technical talks and things like that, I understand that PowerPoint slides are boring for the most part, and I want to show you some cool stuff on the computer. Yeah, so let's keep going. So what is open source intelligence? As you can see, I am too lazy even to paraphrase Wikipedia, so I just literally screen capped it. But I do think that the definition here is a good one. So open source intelligence is data collected from publicly available keyword, sources to be used in an intelligence context, second keyword. So really what it is, it's information that's somewhere out on the internet, publicly available, and you can gather that information, you can make sense of the information that you're gathering in some form of an intelligence context. And this is useful in a number of ways. People use this from all over the place, whether it's in information security, governments use this, businesses use this. You can even think of like, for example, like in real estate. Ever heard of a site called Zillow? Zillow is a huge database of properties that are either for sale or just properties in general. And they've got a lot of information about, you know, what square footage and what the last price that the house sold for, all these different data points from all over the country. That is a publicly available data source, and you can certainly use that type of information to compile useful intelligence data. Maybe if you are a real estate investor of some kind, or maybe you're looking for rental property, you can compile a lot of data points from that. So there's a lot of different uses for open source intelligence. Tonight, specifically, I'm going to talk about how it's used in a security context. And I'm really going to focus more on what a malicious attacker can potentially use open source intelligence. And we'll show some demos of some pretty low-hanging fruit on the internet in terms of vulnerable servers and vulnerable information that's out there. So we'll kind of show some of that stuff. OSINT use cases, I just listed 4 here, but there are obviously much more than this. So from a red team perspective, we use open source intelligence to do passive discovery. So for example, TechGuard, we use NIST 800-115 methodology. You can look it up if you're interested. It is a methodology to do penetration testing. And the first phase of the actual pen test itself after planning is discovery. And you've got 2 different types of discovery, passive and active. Passive discovery is all the information you can glean, generally from OSINT, that does not involve you actually touching the servers of the target. And so we're trying to gather a whole bunch of information about the target without ever sending a packet to their server. That way it's completely undetectable from them. We use that for passive discovery. We use it for reconnaissance. From a blue team perspective, so if you're on the defensive side, you're going to use it for investigations, incident response. So for example, a blue team member might have a user that receives a phishing email that has a weird attachment on it, and they want to see if that attachment is malicious. Well, there's plenty of open source tools out there that provide intelligence as to whether or not a file is malicious based on hashes, for example, or even open sandboxes that you can use that have all these OSINT feeds that are coming in that allow you to kind of investigate an attachment, for example, or a domain, maybe a malicious domain if you want to get some reputation checking or things like that. Lots of sites that allow you to do that. And I'll touch on one in particular tonight from a blue team perspective. Back to the red team side, if you're attacking, social engineering pretext. So what I mean by that is social engineering, that could be in the form of phishing. So making phone calls to a potential target, trying to get them to give you information over the phone, maybe sending phishing emails to their employees, trying to get them to click something, or maybe provide their credentials into a fake portal or something that looks like they're a legitimate portal, but it's not. If you use open source intelligence, you can create much more effective social engineering campaigns. So for example, I had a client probably about 6 to 8 months ago, just doing open source intelligence on their website, just reading their website about the company, discovered that they had an event coming up for their clients. This is a law firm. So the law firm had clients coming for a dinner event. It was kind of like a client appreciation dinner. So using that information, we crafted a phishing email that said basically that the company wants to show the clients the culture of this law firm. We want to show them our culture, and the best way to do that is by allowing us to put images of our employees in some collateral, some marketing collateral. We want to show them, us working together, us working hard for you. These are real employees. We're a real company. We really care about you, that kind of thing. And so the phishing email said basically, hey, you are one of the lucky ones that's going to appear in this brochure, but we need you to sign into this web portal to approve the photo before we can use it. And you can imagine, if you have someone who's got an email that's saying, we're going to use a photo of yours in a brochure that we hand out to all our clients, they're probably pretty interested in seeing that photograph. They want to see what is going to be printed in the brochure. So needless to say, that one was fairly effective. Back on the blue team side, so on the defensive side, monitoring. You can use open source intelligence for monitoring, for example, typo squatting or lookalike domains. So domains that you own that maybe someone has registered a domain that looks like it somehow. Maybe they substitute a 0 for an O, something like that. Something that can be used to trick a user. There's open source tools out there that allow you to monitor for those typo squatters and get alerted to something that happens like that so that you can be proactive. So there's a lot of different use cases. Again, these are just kind of 4 real quick ones here. So tools and techniques. Got Tim Toolman Taylor here. I think, when it comes to open source intelligence, there are so many tools out there that it's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of one of the best things and worst things about open source intelligence, actually, because there's such a huge variety of tools and the life cycle of the tools tends to be short. So you'll have somebody who develops a really awesome tool and it's great and you start using it and then the development kind of falls off. So there's tons of that happening. But there is the open source intelligence is gaining so much momentum, and a lot of that's just driven by the fact that there's so much open source intelligence out there to be sorted through, that all these tools sort of crop up. So tonight I'm going to focus specifically on the tools that you see on the screen, and I chose these specifically because they actually are very easy to use. So you don't have to go to GitHub and download a project and compile something or write a script or anything like that. Every one of these tools can be opened up in a browser window and you can start poking around and seeing what you can see. So if you want to follow along, by all means do that. I think that'd be pretty interesting. You might get more out of the presentation, or if you want to maybe after the presentation poke around, I think that at least to me, I'm a nerd, so I think it's interesting. So I think, you can have a lot of fun poking around and stuff. And I think maybe after this presentation, you'll agree with that. So new tools all the time. I did feel the need to put this in here. There is a disclaimer here. Basically, I want to make sure that everyone on this presentation or views this presentation understands that this is strictly for security awareness and to teach about information security. We do not promote, encourage, support any illegal activity. Any ethical penetration tester never attempts to gain access to unauthorized access to systems or information without explicit permission in the form of a written document. So some of the stuff that you see tonight is going to be real servers on the internet that have potential issues. And it's not that I want to particularly call out those servers, or I don't want to draw any attention to them. They're already out on the internet and they're easy to search for, and it's awareness, right? We want to make sure that people understand this stuff so that we can start fixing it. So use your powers for good. All right, first demo of the night, OSINT framework. This one's kind of a pseudo demo. So what is the OSINT framework? So if you go to osintframework.com, it'll take you to this neat little application, web app. On the far left-hand side, you'll see OSINT framework as the root of this tree. The tree has all these different nodes on it based on information that you could potentially get through open source intelligence. And what this helps you do is, if you're new to OSINT, you're not really sure what to do or how to use the tools, this kind of gives you a way to sort of map a path to a tool or a website that can help you gather the information that you're looking for. So for example, if I am on a client engagement, most of the time we scope our client engagements based on IP address. So if I want to do some open source intelligence on IP address, I can just find that here in the list, click on that, and it's going to expand out into some subcategories. And from here, I can look at things like geolocation. Maybe I want to find out where that IP address is in the world. Maybe I want to get more information based on its IPv4 address, or maybe I want to find reputation. All these different things, and each one of these categories you can expand out. I definitely encourage you to kind of play around in here, because there's just a ton of linked tools in here that makes for an interesting learning or discovery of all these different technologies. So for example, let's just click geolocation. Once again, it expands out into a whole bunch of different tools. And I can just click one of these. Let's open it in a new tab. This is the MaxMind, which is a pretty universal kind of geolocation database. And they have a little demo down here. So if I just punch in an IP address and hit go, it's going to look that IP address up in this geolocation database, provide me a country code, location, network, approximate GPS coordinates, etc., ISP, organization, all that information. And that's true of all of these different links. So as you go through, maybe we want to have a domain name. You can click on that. All kinds of information here. Do I want to look for subdomains of that particular? Maybe I want to look at the who has records, who's registered that domain. Tons of different tools, tons of different things to discover here. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I have more specific demos. Does anybody have any questions so far? All right. So yeah, definitely go play with OSINT framework. I will give a small kind of caveat there. Because the tools are changing so quickly, there are a number of tools that can be linked to within the OSINT framework that are sort of out of date. Some of them are not really being actively maintained or developed. And generally I can kind of tell by, if it links to a GitHub project, for instance, I'll just look at the last time a change was committed. And if it's 6 months, 2 years ago, something like that, you could pretty much bet that that's not being supported any longer, and I'll probably move on. But it's still a pretty useful tool. So, Shodan. Hop back into demo mode. All right, so some of you probably have heard of Shodan. I'm going to kind of give an overview for those who might not have heard of Shodan. And then I'm going to give you kind of some tips and things on how to search for things within Shodan, and then we'll play a game. So this one is probably my favorite, if not, it's definitely top 10 of all the open source intelligence tools. So first of all, what is Shodan? Shodan is a search engine, and much like Google is a search engine. The difference is, as Google's indexing website content. So say if you type into a Google search, pizza delivery with your zip code, it's going to look up in its database of all the different websites for content that most relates to your search, and probably does some lookups based on locations of restaurants and things like that to provide you the most relevant search results it can possibly deliver. I mean, that's why Google is as big as Google is because they, at least to begin with, their search algorithms were so powerful. Shodan is also a search engine. However, it's not indexing website content. It's indexing devices, and it's indexing all of the devices that are on the internet, or at least the vast majority of them. So you can find all kinds of different devices that are plugged into the internet, and more every day, right? In this society, everything plugs into the internet. So you can find webcams on here. You can find routers. You can find SCADA systems. For those of you who don't know what the word SCADA means, that's like an industrial control system of some kind. It usually is a computer that's controlling some mechanical or chemical process or something like that. You can find baby monitors on here, surveillance cameras, all kinds of stuff. And it's all kind of at your fingertips, and it's all passive discovery. So all of this discovery, all the information you can glean from Shodan comes from passive searching. You never have to touch the target systems in order to get this information, right? All right, so how do we search it? One thing I would recommend is creating an account. So if you're playing with Shodan, it's shodan.io. And if you click the My Account button, actually, I don't think, if you're not signed in, you probably won't see that. You'll sign something like sign up or log in. If you sign up with a free account, it gives you access to some of these search parameters that I'm gonna show you. So probably recommend doing that if you want to get into it. All right, so what can we do? How about just searching straight text? Maybe I'm interested in WordPress. WordPress is a content management system. It's a website building tool, essentially. And boom, 670,000 instances. Over here on the left-hand column, you'll see that Shodan is indexing a lot of metadata from the results as well. So it's getting the country, it's getting the services that it sees, organizations, operating systems, and products. And then over on the right-hand side is the specific host's results. And it pulls a lot of data from the host too. So we got the IP address, organization, the location. It's even got the HTTP headers. And it's indexing all of that stuff and makes it extremely fast and easy to search. So let's say, for example, I want to start whittling this down. That's a lot of results. So maybe I'm only interested in results from WordPress sites in the United States. I can just say country : US, and that's going to filter on this particular category here. By the way, you can also just click on it and it'll do the same thing. So I'm going to hit enter here, and let's see how many in the US we have. 321. So we're starting to whittle down our search results. What if I don't care about the city of Ashburn? I'll just take that one off. You can see that's the top result. For some reason, Ashburn has a lot of WordPress sites. I don't know why, but maybe I don't care about those. I can just say minus, and then the key and the value. So the key being city, Ashburn being the value. Take those out, and voila, get rid of those. Now, one thing, if you look over on this top services, this is where stuff starts to get kind of interesting. So you've got HTTPS. That's to be expected. These are all web servers. HTTP, okay. Got HTTP again, but here on port 8080. That's a little bit weird, but not uncommon. Same thing for 8443. And then you got some weird 444. What is that? That, to me, as an attacker, would be interesting, something to look at. Anything different and not normal is something that's potentially interesting to look at. So again, I can whittle down my search results, port : 444. And let's see what those look like. Shodan sometimes is slow, so I apologize. Okay, it's kind of weird. Let's take a look at some of these. So if you click on a particular host, it's going to take you to a different screen. In the top part of the screen, it's going to give you a cool little satellite image based on the GeoIP coordinates. So it'll kind of show you where it is in the world. Over on the left-hand side, some metadata about the country, organization, the host name. Over on the right-hand side, it's all the ports. Look at this bad boy. This thing has got a lot of services going on. And we can just kind of scroll through and you'll see all of the banners even. look at all the information you can glean right away. We know exactly what software is running. OpenSSH, Nginx, Apache. I don't know why you need all those. NTP is running. This thing's running all kinds of stuff. It even has a section for vulnerabilities. And you can see here that the vulnerabilities are implied based on software inversion. So it's taking these banners and all the headers and everything, and it's applying some CVE information to that to say, hey, this server might be vulnerable to some stuff. And so you get all that information, again, without ever having to touch the server. You don't have to do a vulnerability scan. You don't have to do an nmap scan, nothing. Now this right here, if you click view raw data, this will take you to a screen where it's straight key value pairs. And this is handy if you want to do like scripting, for example. You want to scrape the screen and grab this information programmatically. This makes it a little bit easier. But if you were going to do that, you can also just use the Shodan API, which is available if you create an account. All right. The other thing that I wanted to show right away with Shodan is this Explore button. So if you don't know what to look for in Shodan, you can click the Explore button and look at that. They've even got top voted searches in Shodan. And you can just scroll through and click more popular searches and see all these different things that people are looking for in Shodan. Kind of scary. All right, so now we're gonna play a game. And this game is called Guess What I'm Searching For. First person that gets it right, I don't know, gets the respect of everyone on the call. I don't know. Just waiting. All right. Anybody know what I am searching for right now? Wheeler. No audience participation.
Telnet.
Telnet? It's a good guess. Close. Specifically, anything? Maybe you can see some of the information coming in through the headers there. VSFTPD. Anybody heard that one?
Oh, not Telnet, FTP.
Yep, you got it. FTP, and specifically 220 is like the hello message, basically, and 230 is login successful, which is kind of scary considering I didn't log in, right? So what this is searching for is FTP servers that allow anonymous login. And you can see there's 91,869 of them. So every one of the servers that's in this list will allow you to sign into FTP without providing any credentials at all. And can you, I mean, honestly, out of 91,869 devices, do you think there's sensitive data on some of them? I'm betting probably. All right, next one. This one's fun. Any idea what these are? Let's click on one so you get a better view. Specifically port 10,001 down here at the bottom. Any guesses?
Gas tanks. Gas.
Yep. You got it. Yes, these are gas tanks that are on the internet for some reason. I don't know why, but this is an inventory software for a gas station to monitor their inventory levels amongst other things in those big giant tanks of gasoline underneath the ground. Why would you need that on the internet? I have no idea. Is it safe? I don't know. I don't know if there's any vulnerabilities for this, but as everyone probably on this call knows, there's vulnerabilities that come out literally every single day. So if this software that's running this tank inventory system comes out with a 0-day tomorrow, then, you know, that's kind of scary. I mean, imagine just wreaking havoc on these volume levels. What happens in the gas tank when the station thinks that their tanks are empty when they're totally full, or vice versa? I mean, it's pretty scary. So there's lots of stuff like that on the internet. Again, that's more of a SCADA thing, right? Industrial control system. Let's go to the next one. All right, anybody guess what these are?
Something related to phones.
Yes.
Voice over IP, maybe.
Yep. Yeah. These are Polycom devices, which are VoIP. I'm not sure exactly what they are. They might be a PBX. They might be an actual phone. I don't know. But these are Polycom devices that have Telnet open, and they don't have a failed login message, which means that, again, you're able to execute the Polycom command shell without having to log in. And there's, 250 of those on the internet. That's always fun. All right, one more of these, and then I got another kind of sister project to Shodan here that we'll take a look at. This one I don't expect that you guys probably will be able to guess just by the results here. Might be able to. I would say the hint here is look at the tags, and the tags are little gray icons. Any guesses on what that might be? I know it's kind of a weird one. All right, I'm gonna give you this one. This was too hard. DICOM is a manufacturer of medical imaging technology. In other words, these are X-ray machines. Again, why they are on the internet, I could not tell you, but there's 1,200 X-ray machines that are on the internet and will respond to this passive discovery. Again, is it safe? I don't know. It's probably safe for now, but as vulnerabilities come out for these devices, you definitely don't want this stuff on the internet unless there's an absolute business need for it, right? All right, so we're going to pivot over to a side project on Shodan, which is a little bit newer, and this is images.shodan.io. So as Shodan starts indexing and creating this database of devices out on the internet, it's also taking screenshots, and this images.shodan.io will allow you to look at those screenshots that it's capturing and search using the same search criteria that you can use back on shodan.io. So we're going to play the same game. Won't be as many though, I promise. And let's just take a look at this one. Anybody know what this RFB stands for? It's kind of a weird protocol thing. And I don't blame you if you don't know, it's kind of obscure. So RFB stands for Remote Frame Buffer. And it is a protocol that is used to view graphical user interfaces for remote desktop. But this is specifically in use for VNC. So VNC is like a remote desktop kind of client, just like RDP is in Windows. And this authentication disabled message appears in the banner when you've disabled authentication for VNC. So every device here is a screenshot of open devices on the internet that has no authentication requirement whatsoever. And you can just page after page on this, and it's pretty scary, some of the stuff that you see that is open to the internet. All right, last one, the one you've all been waiting for. I'm sure. This one will be very obvious as to what it is. You can probably already tell by the search. Come on, Shodan, you can do it. I believe in you. Maybe. Shodan is, we've angered Shodan apparently. And it does not want to respond to my requests. Okay, I think I'm gonna skip that one. Maybe we'll come back to that. try one more time that I've refreshed the page. Oh, there we go. Pretty obvious what this is, right? These are all just webcams. Webcams are open to the internet, no authentication. I would say some of the people know that these are open. Most of the people probably have no idea. They probably hooked up the webcam and it was insecure by default because manufacturers and security sometimes have a conflict of interest because security costs money. And so you'll find a lot of lower cost, typically, devices, webcams, IoT devices, typically come with a pretty low bar for security. So, you can just kind of venture a guess as to, what all you can find in here. But again, I don't encourage you to go out and try to break into anything like this. This is all about awareness, right? We want to make sure that people know that these types of tools exist so that they know how important it is to make sure that they set up devices security. This is low-hanging fruit type stuff. So as an attacker who's lazy, and that's generally, what most attackers are, they're going to search out stuff like this all the time because it just is too easy. And one of the things I also like to show you here in Shodan is, let's say, for example, I'm looking for a particular attack vector. Okay, so if I'm looking for a particular attack against a Cisco iOS device, for example, one of the things that I find troubling is the amount of time that users who set up devices don't update the default credentials on those devices. And so it's fairly easy to go out and search for something like that. So for example, if I look at Cisco iOS devices, port 23, telnet, loading, Shodan, being slow. Maybe Shodan's just having problems right now. I think Shodan performance issues sometimes have to do with a lot of the integrated tools because a lot of API calls. Anyway, all right, so right here, you can see the first results right here in the banner even. It says, Cisco configuration professional install with this device requires the username Cisco with the password Cisco. These are the default credentials, right? Default credentials are extremely easy to find. If you're not familiar with this site, cert.net, this is the same people that make Nikto, which is a web server specific vulnerability scanner. They have a default password database where you can just search and find all the default passwords for any manufacturer, really, or most manufacturers, not anything. And so Cisco is certainly in this list, and they've got all the usernames and passwords there that you could possibly want in terms of default passwords. So, I mean, how trivial do you think it would be to do a search like this in Shodan, download the results, get close to 9,000 IP addresses, and then bounce these default passwords off of them? And that's why it makes it's so important to ensure that at least basic security hygiene type stuff is being adhered to, is being validated in the environment. I've been on lots of client engagements where on the surface everything looks, there's a security team and they're doing all the right stuff, but there's little stuff that can cause big problems. And like, these are the kind of low-hanging fruit type stuff, obviously, but it's important to validate, not just kind of assume that things are happening the right way. Appliances and default passwords, always an attack vector that I would check. All right, let me bounce back into, I think we still had a presentation somewhere. There it is. Any questions? I know I talk a lot, so I apologize. No? Okay. Next demo on the list here, Sploitus, whatever. This is something that I've just recently started using, but I think it's pretty cool. So Sploitus.com. This is essentially a database full of proof of concept exploit code. And so if you see a vulnerability for a system, maybe you found it in a vulnerability scan, maybe you saw it in the Shodan results as they came back, you can go here and search for that stuff. So for example, Bluekeep was a vulnerability that came out in the not too distant past. That was a pretty serious vulnerability for remote desktop. And a lot of servers were vulnerable to Bluekeep, and there's still a lot of servers vulnerable to Bluekeep. If I'm interested in searching for exploit code for that, I can just type Bluekeep into the search bar, and here you go. Top result is a Metasploit module. It has a score of 10. That would be out of 10, so that's pretty bad. You can just click on that, and boom, there's the exploitation code. Copy it, download it, open it. You've got the source code. You could share it with your buddies. Lots of dangerous exploit code in here. What's nice about this, as opposed to say ExploitDB, which is kind of another site that does something similar, is that this kind of aggregates a number of sources together. So you can see ExploitDB is in there, packet storm, Metasploit, and you can see all those results aggregated into a central console, and it displays the code in line so you can see right away what you're looking at. So one of the things, let's go back to Showdown real quick. Let's see if our search fund finished. Yes, I did. One of the things you can do if you're a malicious attacker is search for vulnerable hosts. Instead of taking the approach of, I have a set of systems that are in target, in scope, right? That's what a red teamer does. That's an ethical hacker, somebody that has rules of engagement document. They have these rails that they have to stay on. An attacker that doesn't have those restrictions can take completely different approaches. They can go the opposite direction. I have some exploit. I can search the entire internet and try to find servers that are exploitable. And obviously, because of just the vast number of devices out on the internet, you're going to have a much bigger success rate doing that, because you don't have any restrictions or ethical restrictions or an ROE to follow, right? And that's why it's so dangerous. I mean, these tools exist for security professionals, but attackers certainly use them as well. So for this, for example, VSAT is a satellite uplink for, in particular, this is a HughesNet VSAT. I'm going to click on this real quick, pull this up. Not what I wanted. Not what I wanted either. There we go. So what we're looking at right now is a VSAT node that is running some software called Nostromo. Nostromo is a software that's specifically been designed for satellite uplinks on boats. So if you have a boat and you are rich enough to not only have a boat but also need internet on it, then you will have Nostromo potentially as the software that's running your satellite uplink to the internet. So let's say I look up this host, it's got Nostromo on it. I can pop that back over into Sployus and just search that. It's going to search all the exploits that are known for Nostromo. And I can sort by different things here, including score, which is usually what I would sort by, or date, depending on what I'm looking at here. And right away we see Nostromo version 196 has a remote code execution vulnerability. You can crack that open and take a look here. And you can just kind of tell by the payload here, all these dot slash. This is a directory traversal vulnerability. It's basically getting access to something on the server that wasn't intended by using these little dot slash characters. So if you're interested in learning about that, just search directory traversal vulnerabilities. And in this case, it leads to remote code execution, which means, you can run, as the attacker, you could run your own code on that server remotely without having to authenticate, right? You're exploiting this directory traversal to run your own malicious code. And it is vulnerable in version 196. Unfortunately for us as an attacker, right, this is version 195. Well, this is where, if you're the attacker and you don't have the code of conduct, right, you're a black hat and you don't care about, protecting folks on the internet, then you don't necessarily care about attacking this particular server. You're okay with attacking anything. So I can just go up here and search for whatever it is that I have an exploit for. In this case, 196. and I'll just hit search. And look at that, one lonely server. Looks like it's in Spain. And it is running Nostromo 1.96. Now this server is running a known vulnerable software, and it's out on the internet and it's easily discoverable. What do you think the chances are that this server is actually already probably pwned? I would say that it's extremely high. We can do these types of searches, right, for our own environments. We can do them for clients. We want to know what the attackers already know, right? We can't really do the ostrich syndrome and just ignore that this stuff is out there. Like we gotta be able to use the tools that that attackers have at their disposal to try to mimic what they would do. Any questions on that? We'll move on to the next part. No? Okay. Pop back. Oh, look at that. It's intermission. So unfortunately, you know, like we were talking about a little bit earlier on the call here, we were reminiscing about the pre-COVID cyber meetup and all the pizza and beer that was to be had. So hopefully one day we'll get back to that point where we can all eat pizza and drink beer together. But there's no intermission, there's no snacks, sorry. All right, so next step here is the GRAYHAT WARFARE. So this is a tool that I think is also a little bit scary, but also very informative, very good tool for security awareness. And this one focuses around AWS. So if you're not familiar, AWS has a service called S3. S3 stands for Simple Storage Solution. And essentially, you can think of that as a file share. It's just like a file share you'd have on the network, or a SharePoint, maybe even FTP server, same thing. Just a place to put files that can be accessible on the internet. So on Amazon S3, you can either create these buckets, they call it, which is really nothing more than like a folder, and put data in it, keep it private so that only specific resources within the Amazon environment, resources that you control, have access to them, or you can make them public. And there's reasons why you would do both, right? You might need a public bucket that has available public access for everyone. Say if you were hosting images that end up being hosted on your web server. If you have web server images and you go to domain.com and you load it up and the images are being hosted in that bucket, they have to be publicly accessible or it will break the website. So there's good reasons for having publicly accessible buckets, but there's also very strong reasons for not doing it when the data is sensitive. Unfortunately, people all the time mess this up. And there is cases, just Google it, lots of leaked data on S3 buckets that were misconfigured. This website, buckets.gray, let's go back to this website, buckets.grayhatwarfare.com, is yet another search engine. This one indexes S3 buckets that are public and allows you to search with keywords, terms, file extensions, etc. And you can find lots and lots of very interesting files on here. So for example, you could just literally search passwords and text as the extension. This may, yeah, I gotta log in. Try that one again. Passwords, text. Some of these are not sensitive, but some of them probably are. How about password.txt? You can see some of these here that are populating. Probably not meant to be public. This is true of PDFs, docx, CSV, I mean, you name it. There's a lot of potential, whoops, I didn't mean to click that. There's a lot of files on S3 right now that people have no idea that are being hosted. And this is, again, one of those things that I would recommend you searching for yourself, for your clients, and for your own businesses, especially since, for example, you can search keywords that pertain to your enterprise, right? You might discover some leaked information that's already been out there that maybe you didn't know about. Anyway, it's again, mostly for awareness, but understanding that S3 configuration is such a big issue, just Google search S3 data leaks and you'll find tons of stories on that. All right, in the interest of time, so it's almost 7:30 already. I probably have about 15 minutes more. So I'm just gonna kind of power through. I won't be offended though if you have to drop off at 7:30, it's not a problem. I think technically it goes till 8, but I know that the last portion of the meeting was kind of a Q&A and sort of discussion piece. So I'm just gonna kind of keep powering through because we did start a little bit late. And then if you need to drop off, there'll be a recording too. So if you're interested, you can always kind of hop back up on there. So the next tool I want to talk about is VirusTotal. This one's been around for a while, and I think a lot of people are familiar with it. Those who work in information security are going to be probably familiar with VirusTotal. VirusTotal is a very useful tool, especially in the blue team side, because it allows you to do some OSINT on files and domains very quickly and easily, and it provides you kind of an aggregate list of the information that you find. So let's take a look at VirusTotal real quick. VirusTotal was, I believe, it was bought by Google, actually. I think so. Anyway, another site that I would probably recommend just signing up for an account. I don't think you actually have to have an account there, but it would be helpful. So let me show here. I'm going to drop a file. So main screen in VirusTotal, you're going to have file, URL, and search. So what's the use case here? If you're an incident responder at an enterprise and you have a user that receives a phishing email with an attachment, and you're in the process of investigating that, one of the things that you could do or add to the incident response plan is drop the file into something like a VirusTotal. Now, if you're not, comfortable doing this in a public forum, there's certainly other options out there in terms of, private API keys and tools that integrate with VirusTotal, or if you want to maybe host your own internal sandbox and do this sort of thing, you can certainly do that as well. But this one's just openly available. Also, as I'm talking here, I'm going to drop this in here. Also, the nice thing about this is anybody can use it, right? So, for example, my son plays a lot of video games, and most of the time he's getting video games from like trusted sources like Steam or something like that, which is, for the most part, I kind of trust that. However, every once in a while he finds some off-the-wall game that's like on a website somewhere, and that's always pretty scary, right? You don't want to install something from just a random website. Well, one of the things that you can do if you're not sure of a file, if you're not 100% sure that it is legitimate, is just drop it in VirusTotal. This is in no way a guarantee, but if it's known malware, and it's been around or whatever, it's probably going to pop up here. Now, what happened when I dropped that file in is it calculated a hash, and it did a whole bunch of other stuff in the background that you didn't see. And it's checking that file hash against all these different data sources. And a lot of them you're going to be able to recognize. So Sophos, for example, is in there. WebRoot, Trend Micro, Microsoft, Kaspersky, Fortinet, all these big cybersecurity names. And it's checking this information against all of these at the same time. Because as we know, the antivirus is kind of a tough, it's a tough problem to solve, right? I mean, this stuff gets created every day. And to keep up with all of that is a difficult thing to do, especially when it's signature based. And so this checks it against all these detection engines all at the same time. It also gives you details like all the different hashes, signature info, the file, if it's been signed, and you can see who signed the software. You can see all of the sections in the code, all of the DLLs and like imported libraries. All this kind of interesting stuff, especially to a techie kind of incident responder, is all right there at your fingertips. And it has comments, so from the community. In this case, it doesn't have any comments, but sometimes you find a file that's been, searched a few times, and maybe it has one detection or something, and you can have community members come in and say, no, that's a false positive, and here's why, that kind of thing. So it's a very useful tool. Definitely encourage you to incorporate it into incident response playbooks. Because I find it to be quick, easy, and useful. The other thing that VirusTotal has a lot of integrations as well, and one of the coolest integrations that I've found for VirusTotal is if you're not familiar with sysinternals. Sysinternals is a package of Windows tools that was written by Mark Rusunovich, and he has a bunch of different really useful utilities. One of which is called Process Explorer. And Process Explorer is a lot like Task Manager in Windows. It shows you all the different running processes in your machine, but it gives you infinitely more details about them. Well, VirusTotal actually integrates with Process Explorer. And so if you are maybe, say, troubleshooting a relative or something that thinks they have malware, and you run the virus scan and you don't see anything, one further step that you could potentially do, download Process Explorer, which again is from a package called sysinternals, and then plug in your VirusTotal API key, which you get when you sign up, and it will go through all of the processes currently running on that machine and run their hashes in VirusTotal against all of these detection engines for you in the background. And you'll see if any of them are detected as malware. And that is actually a pretty efficient way to get a good sweeping sort of malware scan across and not rely on any one particular engine there. Any questions on that? That's kind of okay. And then the other thing is URL. Same thing. If you're an incident responder and you get a malicious email, and you can just punch in a URL and search for it. It's going to do reputation lookup in this case. So a lot of the same names here, some different ones, but mostly it's web proxies and things like that. It'll give you kind of the status messages, details, the IP address, the status code. Here's some of the headers, tracking information, HTML, title, cookies, all this stuff. Again, all passive. You don't actually have to visit these sites and potentially put any kind of risk on the machine that you're doing the investigation from. So, all right, let's pop back over to the presentation. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about today is Google Dorks, which has been also around basically as far back as Google started. Google, again, indexing, it's a search engine. It allows you to search for website content, but most people use the very basic functions of Google searching. And for most people, that's more than enough. That's more than what they need even. However, you may be surprised to see, or maybe not, that there's a lot of different search syntax that Google understands, and you can really improve just your Google your Google knowledge, makes your searches a little bit better, but it also enables some bad actors to find some interesting things that Google just sort of hands them. So let's take a quick demo of this, and then we'll take some questions, if there's any. All right, so basic Google searching, right? You can just say Steve Jobs, basic text search. You can also do something like, let's do Jobs or Gates. Actually, we're gonna make that capitalized. Okay, so we also have the OR operator, which allows you to basically search two things at once. You can have results that either has the word Jobs or Gates in it. You can do and. You can do minus sign. So you could say, just like when we showed in Shodan, maybe I want to look for the word Jobs, but not the word Apple. I can subtract that out there. This is always a fun one. Have you guys ever seen this one? Whoops, I didn't type it right. I still didn't type it right. Whoa, that one's just kind of an Easter egg, right? There's like, I don't know, 10 of those. Anyway, you can also do things like this. This is where it starts to get interesting from an attacker point of view. You have the file type keyword modifier. You also can do things like cite. So actually you can see in my save searches here. One of the things you can do if you're on a client engagement or maybe for your own business, search the site : domain name and then a file type. And instead of searching just all the content, it's only going to search for hosted documents of that particular file type. And you'd be surprised sometimes people don't realize what they're hosting on the internet. Something was uploaded maybe by mistake, never was deleted, and maybe it's not even linked to on the website, so people don't really realize that it's there. But you could, substitute that for whatever file type that you're interested in. You can do things like in title to search for particular things in the title of the website. So let's we're going to do a couple Google Dorks here, and then we'll start wrapping this up. In this case, I'm using in title as a key, as the key, index of, and then just the text root Etsy security. So anybody who knows a little bit about the Linux operating system knows how dangerous this probably is, right? So these are websites that have their Etsy directory open to the internet, and they have directory indexing turned on so that you can see the contents, right? What about this one? Again, index of, indicating that the web server has directory indexing turned on, and it's got FTP admin in the URL. Pretty dangerous stuff. 14,000 results. Probably some sensitive data in there somewhere is my guess. Here's another one. In text, username equal, and there's the and operator. Password equal. By the way, if you see these quotations, that tells Google that you mean that to search for that specific phrase. So like you can have a whole long phrase and put it in quotes, and it'll search, instead of trying to break that phrase into each individual word and include it in the search separately, it'll take that entire phrase that you put in quotes and search for an exact match based on that. So here you go. Passwords in logs on the internet. Not good. API secret keys, YAML files on the internet. Private RSA keys on the internet. So again, the idea here, let's raise awareness on this type of stuff. People in the security discipline, I think we do a pretty good job of kind of sounding the alarm on some of this stuff. But I also think that demonstrating things like this help to make it real for people. Because sometimes it, and admittedly so, I mean, some of the things in security, right? There's a lot of bell ringing and things like that for vulnerabilities that come out all the time. But I do think it's important sometimes to come back and just consider basic security hygiene and make sure and validate that some of this stuff isn't a problem for your organization, because it is a problem for a lot of organizations. And don't make the assumption that everything that should be configured correctly is configured correctly. All right, let me go back here, and that's it. That's all I got for you guys. So what questions do you have for me?
Are you going to post a list of these URLs?
Yeah, I think we can do that maybe on the Cyber Meetup, or yeah, well, I can certainly get that
Yeah, that would be
to you for
that'd
sure.
be good.
Yeah, definitely.
You and I can work together and do that.
Okay. Sounds good.
Does anybody else have any questions for Zach tonight? Going once? Twice? All right, awesome. Well, thank you, Zach. We really appreciate you presenting tonight and sharing some of your awesome knowledge with us. And again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to contact us at TechGuard. And then, as always, we'll be posting the recording, I believe tomorrow, if not the next day. And then thanks for everybody that joined us this evening. We really appreciate it. And be on the lookout for next month's Cyber Meetup, which, wow, is already October. That's insane. Oh my, which I'm looking right now and it looks like it's going to be on the 6th. October 6th. It's always the first Tuesday of the month. So be on the lookout for who our next speaker will be next month. And again, if nobody has any questions for Zach, we're going to wrap it up for the night. And again, thank you for everybody who joined us.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
All right.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zach. Everybody have a really great night.